Loxodont is one of the most popular fighters in Rivals 2. His big axe, custom combos, and flashy kill confirms make him one of the smoothest characters in the game. However, Loxodont isn't known to have the easiest time at a high level since his matchup chart isn't the best, especially if you're looking to compete among the greatest. That's why, this week I reached out to two of my high-level Lox friends, Nothai, a rival streamer, and Viviana, a Lox player who always ranks at the tippity top of the weekly last stock brackets. If you want to follow them both, all their info is linked down below. Both of these players sent me their matchup charts, as well as some notes detailing what made what matchups difficult or kind of easy, as well as some notes to help you throughout your matches. Obviously, since we're working with two charts here, I'll be evening them out and talking about the differences when they come up. For our first winning and easiest matchup, we have Crag in a slightly winning tier. Viviana actually ranked Crag as winning while Nothai ranked them as even, so this is the highest average between the two of them. To navigate this matchup, Lox needs to rely on a lot of his longer range tools and buttons, like Boulder, Jab, and F-Tilt, as well as some properly spaced aerials when he's landing. Since, if Crag's able to get in, or if you're too close to Crag, his powerful get-off-me tools can easily overwhelm Loxodont. Rock is also pretty hard to react to in some spots, so if you don't play around it carefully, you can easily get run over by it due to Loxodont's heavy weight and big size, making it easy to land it on him. On the other hand though, Lox does have some of the biggest disjoints in the game, making it pretty easy to poke at Crag while he pulls Rock, or poke at the Rock itself once it's actually on the stage. Another highlight of this matchup is the offstage game, where Crag is super vulnerable to being pushed around as he tries to make it back to the ledge. Lox's big options are really great for calling out and catching movement, without needing to be quite as precise as other characters, making it a lot easier to squash the bug when he's in a vulnerable position. On the flip side though, Loxodont's recovery is also super vulnerable, so navigating to ledge against tools like Rock, Down Air, and Down B is pretty tricky as well. So be sure to hold on to magma charges to mix up where you're at in these situations. Overall, Crag is a slightly winning matchup for Loxodont and a plus 0.5 tier. Moving away from the winning tier though, cause who wants to do that, am I right? Our first even matchup is actually Fleet. Viviana thought that this one was winning, so I have it ranked the highest tier out of all the even ones. She said that neutral is actually pretty easy into Fleet, since if you stay at mid-range, Fleet's kind of forced to rely on her projectiles to approach you, which are super easy to parry or swat away. And since her burst speed isn't the best, and her normals are, well, they're disjointed but smaller than Loxodonts, mean that she really has trouble getting in. Her lightweight and lacking movement speed also means that it's not unheard of to catch her in an unoptimal spot and blow up one of her stocks, with a move like upstrong or back air. Nothai did note that Lox's throws, which are normally really great and a core part of his gameplay, don't really work super well into Fleet however, since her floatiness and frame 4 nair allows her to either float away from your combo, or punish Loxodont for getting too close and chasing her too much an advantage. The solution to this is to obviously play that longer mid-range poke fight that I mentioned, but you'll probably see a weaker advantage state due to that. As we know, Fleet also blows up stocks with ease off stage, making Loxodont's life super hard when recovering. My best tip to help you out here is to either aim to go high enough to dodge threats like Bear and Nair, or hug the wall, allowing you to tech her down air. There's not really an 100% way to recover in this matchup, so just mix it up and stay locked in whenever you're off stage. Our second even matchup is Forest Burn. Forest Burn also has a big hitbox similar to Loxodont. However, Loxodonts are more consistent and have more variety, meaning that as long as you stay at a mid-range, you should keep a solid upper hand here. Meatball is really great for clearing smoke as well, since the move is kinda able to be angled like an Angry Bird to get rid of any stage hazard that Forest Burn would want to set. This also works really well into his recovery, since while Forest Burn's recovery isn't bad necessarily, the boulder can easily snuff out smoke that he wants to teleport to, or interrupt a side beat to the wall. Speaking of that, forward air and back air being disjointed mean that you easily can poke and challenge Forest Burn while he's starting his side B, breaking it and removing it from his kit for a few seconds. Normally, this is enough time to secure a kill if you're off stage, especially if it prevents him from getting back to the wall that he so desperately needs to recover. Forest Burn does have solid tools in this matchup as well, especially when ledge guarding and trapping, so by no means is this matchup free, but you can clear him off stage, and then you should be all good. Our third even matchup is Clarin. Nothai noted that this was actually their favorite matchup, since he gets so much more mileage off of grabs, and that obviously, Lox's axe is much bigger than Clarin's sword, and just for today, size matters. This means, however, that Lox is able to mitigate the power of Claren's strongest resource, since if you play in a way that she can't consistently take little pokes and swings at you, she becomes a lot less threatening and can't really play the way that she'd like to in neutral. This gives Loxodont a lot more freedom to swing and scrap with Claren. However, be sure to not get too comfy here, since she is one of the faster fighters in the game, meaning that if you whiff, it's not really impossible for her to close the gap and get a grab, leading to one of her big combos. Speaking of her combo game, her tippers being so generous, as well as Loxodont being the size of a barn, means that escaping her advantage might be a little rough. My best advice is to take a deep breath while being comboed and don't rush to escape it. If you do, you'll get your resources eaten and get advantage state pushed on you even harder. Edalus is sliding up next into our list. He suffers similar problems to Loxodont, where his big body leaves him vulnerable to getting comboed really hard, and his recovery is pretty easy to cover off stage. However, he also gets insanely fast burst movement that can clear so much space in so little time, making it super hard to navigate neutral at a mid-range the way that Lox prefers. However, if Edalus does use dash attack to close the gap, Loxodont can cover it with up tilt, since the anti-air property should probably stuff out a jump, or would punish him for getting too close to you on the floor. One tip that Viviana left us with is to always have at least one magma charge, which will allow you to bait an air dodge from Edalus off stage, and then remove his stock with a confirm from down B. When recovering as Loxodont in this matchup, be sure to not burn your down B early, since Edalus can snuff it out with icicles. I suggest waiting for him to use his side B, jumping and blocking them with an up air, or using side B to stall yourself in the air, and then recover with down B, since once you use the side B, it's on an 100 frame cooldown. Finally, for our last even matchup, we have Maple. I have Maple down here at the bottom of losing, since Viviana thought that she was even, while Nothai had her in slightly losing. So if there was a hardest even matchup, this one might be it. Loxodont's big body makes this matchup so tricky, since you're probably going to be getting juggled by a few million up airs, similarly to Claren. The advice for navigating these spots is kind of the same as Claren though, being to not burn your resources until you can safely escape disadvantage for good. On the other side though, Maple's size normally helps her a lot in fights, making her hard to hit and compressing her under fighters' approaches. This doesn't really work against Loxodont however, since the axe is Jumbotron size, meaning that hitting her is never too tricky. In this matchup, you can also rely on Maple to approach you, since closing the gap is how she'll start big combos or juggles, meaning that you can play a good distance from her and require her to close it, instead of the other way around. Her lightweight also means that you can easily steal an early stock from her. Holding on to at least 2 charges of magma also means you'll be able to consistently go super deep off stage against her and push her away from the wall that she really needs to make that recovery. Before we move on to our slightly losing matchups, I want to take a really quick second to remind you to use code LASTSTOCK in the Rivals 2 shop. It's the best way to support videos like these, and my weekly online tournaments. As always, thanks so much for watching, and let's check out those losing matchups. Starting with our least losing fighter, we have Olympia. Nothai actually really liked this matchup, noting that Olympia was pretty easy to keep out, and play that nice little mid-range against her as long as you are mindful of her burst movement, and that she's also pretty easy to interrupt off stage. However, in a lot of scenarios, it can also be pretty tricky to fully account for all of Olympia's burst options, and with Loxodont's big body, there's not really a lot that he can do to discourage Olympia from mashing away on him once she does finally close that big gap. Down throw, however, is really strong in this matchup for Loxodont, since it forces the opponent to roll on the ground, and Olympia's roll is pretty short as we know, making chasing down an advantage state just a hair easier against her. Olympia, however, has huge combos like I mentioned a minute ago, but she also has so many strong finishers that allow her to mix up how she wants to finish a combo and cover DI. This is kind of in ways that other characters above this list normally can't. Think of like Claren neutral special or Edalus up air being their combo finisher. However, Olympia has tools like forward air, up special, down air, side B, and she kind of gets whatever out of that, or crystallization, which combos into your whole imagination. You kind of get the idea. All in all, it makes the matchup slightly harder and slightly losing for the elephant. Our next losing fighter is Zetterburn. Zetter is pretty similar to Olympia here, but to a bit more of an extreme, since Zetter's base speed is a little better than hers, and tools like Fireball help him close gaps a lot more consistently. The big highlights to this matchup, for Loxodont at least, is how he can keep Zetter out, and how easy it is to ledge guard Zetterburn, since if you aren't ready to go for a big spike, you can kind of just prevent him from even reaching the ledge with moves like forward air. However, no matchup is really as simple as that at the end of the day, since eventually Zitterburn will close the gap on you, and nuke Loxodont with the power of a million multi-shines, upstrongs, and high damage strings offstage. To mitigate Zitterburn's offstage power though, be sure to have magma charges ready to go, since if he whiffs a 50-50 kill confirm, you can take a shot at reversaling him with a down B or an aerial. Be sure to take advantage of reverse hitboxes here too. Overall though, the matchup isn't hopeless, but it's not good enough to rise any higher up on our list. Rano's up next, and our last slightly losing matchup. Similarly to our last two matchups, Rano has a really easy time netting big combos on Lox, punishing the elephant off stage, and securing early kills. However, Rano also has needles, which allow him to play a little bit more defensively, or approach a lot more safely than most other fighters, meaning that he has a bit more wiggle room to combat Loxodont's mid-range poke game. This isn't to say that you should try to close gaps against Rano and just scrap with him, just that your normal neutral game plan might be really put to the test in this matchup. For a little good news though, Loxodont's grab and jab are both really strong into Rano since he's a fast faller, meaning you can push advantage really hard here. Your forward air is also big enough to catch Rano's recovery, relatively easy to the rest of the cast, allowing you to punish him offstage consistently in ways that other characters can't. This is probably the hardest of these slightly losing matchups, but as long as you play patiently and take advantage of Rano's weak points, you should be able to navigate this one. For our first hard losing matchup, let's talk about Absa. Absa is the newest rival, but her tech is pretty well known at the point of making this video. Loxodont has to play a little weird in this matchup, since Absa normally wants to camp more than Loxodont. This means that closing gaps while still spacing your aerials and normals is optimal. But Absa's kit makes that a bit hard, since at long range she's got an advantage, and in point blank she kinda also wants to just grab, jab, and start a combo at you, giving her an advantage. Loxodont's size is also super detrimental in this matchup, since connecting moves like Cloud or Tipper aerials becomes really easy against such a big body, and Absa's floatiness means that she can escape up throw combos, forcing Lox to rely on less reliable down throw combos. The good news of this matchup is that Absa is super light and dies mad early. You can explode stocks as early as 60 or 70% off of covering an option out of down throw, so be sure to take advantage of openings like that when you can. Soaring into our second hard losing matchup placement, we have Raster. Raster kinda has everything that the rest of the losing matchups have had so far, but his unique tools allow him to mitigate Loxodont's strengths in other ways that other characters just can't. Tools like Slipstream allow Raster to apply so much pressure in neutral, forcing Loxodont to play even campier than normal. But even then, that doesn't always really help. And Raster having extra jumps means it's a lot harder to pin the bird down off stage and get high reward there, since Loxodont needs to commit to chasing him down to secure a kill, and Raster doesn't necessarily need to commit when he wants to come back to stage. Speaking of stage, however, if you can force Raster to recover with the neutral special, he's pretty vulnerable to getting hit by a charged strong attack, and if you can catch his up B, his lightweight leaves him super susceptible to a spike. If you're having trouble in this matchup, I suggest taking Raster to a stage that you're comfortable playing under a platform in, and using tools like Jab to keep him out. He is on the stubbier side, so the matchup isn't fully hopeless, but you'll have to really commit to a slow neutral game if you want to get anywhere in the matchup. Finally, for our hardest matchup, it's Orcane. Orcane's kind of a culmination of all the difficult aspects of a matchup so far on the list. He's got great burst movement, a good combo game that racks up lots of damage on Lox, good ledge guarding tools to gimp Lox off stage with, and on top of all that, he has tools to counter his own Loxodont if he feels like he needs to. All of this probably seems pretty bad, but Loxodont probably has something good going for him, right? Like, he can probably kill Orcane pretty early or line up easy ledge guards to take stocks fast, right? But actually no. Orcane's pretty heavy, so he just doesn't die early, and his recovery forces Loxodont to either opt to ledge trapping, which isn't great into a fighter with so much burst movement, or go and chase Orcane off stage to try and spike the whale. But in that case, he'll just teleport to his puddle. It's really a lose-lose scenario. Overall, you want to force Orcane to navigate around your big disjoint, since the whale is stubby, and you'll also want to have at least a few magma charges off stage to force the Orcane player to respect you there. That side B change to Orcane does help a little bit in this matchup, but as I noted, it's a pretty poor matchup all around, and a standout bad one for the Elephant. With that being said though, that just about wraps up all of Loxodonts matchups. If you're a Lox player and feel a bit discouraged by so many losing matchups, don't be. There's lots of players that make the Elephant work and rely on the high points in his kit, and his ability to fight from a mid-range and be so scary off stage to win even the hardest matchups. Let me know what you think we got right and wrong down in the comments below. And how do you feel Lox does into your main? He's one of the weirder characters to make a chart for, so I'm super curious to what you guys think. As always, thanks tons for watching, and I can't wait to try Galvin out with you all next week. Until then, bye for now.